Back on Radio Row ahead of Super Bowl 58 live and exclusive this weekend on talkSPORT. Well, exclusive from the stadium. We are doing our own commentary. We are on play-by-play with Jeff Reinbold alongside me and Nat Coombs hosting the show. But Radio Row, we like catching up with old friends. And I have to say, we love getting Marshall Newhouse on, former offensive tackle in the NFL. Heard you on the Mina Kimes podcast the other day, a personal favourite of mine.
Yeah, she's great.
Thought you were absolutely sensational.
Thank you very much.
Thoroughly enjoyed it.
That was a fun time. She's very easy to do the show with, and you can see why she's had so much success. So I was happy to be there.
I think Mina's here at about 1:45 today, so in an hour or so she's coming on with us. And I was like, let's try and get Marshall and Mina kind of lined up around the same time.
Tell her we talked, because I think I'm going to see her today or tomorrow. But yeah, she's great.
Absolutely love it. Marshall, how are you doing, man? How have you been?
Doing well. Just another year of retirement and trying to stay close to the game, doing more broadcast stuff. I'm doing some stuff with SiriusXM and kind of build my career, as you mentioned, alluded to the Mina Kimes podcast. So just talking more football, paying more intentional attention to the games on Sundays, and carving out a career path.
I love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely love to hear it. With all of that in mind, we'll get into a bit of career stuff as well, but talk to me about how you're seeing this game this weekend and where I think we talked a lot about the stars, etc. Where do you think that maybe is a hidden area that we're not looking at where this could be won and lost?
I think ultimately, we recognize Pat as the best quarterback in the league, but top to bottom, the 49ers are the better team. And so they need more guys to just play well, just do their job for them to be in a position to win the game. And I think we're looking at Pat needing to do kind of something superhero-ish. You hope that Rashee Rice shows up to play. He's been kind of coming along, really exciting to see. You hope that MVS has had a kind of resurgence with the security with his receptions. But I think ultimately the Kansas City defense, which has, for lack of a better term, carried them all year, I think the broader NFL media was reluctant to even say what we were witnessing. But what we were witnessing was the Kansas City offense not finding their rhythm, not having a reliable number two outside of Travis Kelce, but the defense keeping them in games and winning them games, led by Steve Spagnuolo, but a lot of heralded and unheralded guys who were just exceptional. I mean, the Justin Reed was like an incredible kind of under-the-radar signing. He's having an incredible year. Obviously, the Chris Jones, the unfortunately now injured Charles Omenihu, but a young guy like George Karlaftis, Nick Bolton coming back from injury. So the defense has kind of still been unheralded. I mean, I think in this playoff run they've gotten more credit, but the entire year we were just like, what's wrong with the Chiefs? And I'm like, they just shifted how they win this year.
It's terrifying, if anything.
By necessity or whatever the roster looked like. They just shifted how they are winning, and we were so used to the Pat Mahomes offense is blowing us away, when in reality I'm sure they were very self-aware in the building about how we were going to win Sunday to Sunday, and they were doing that. And I think for them to win, that has to continue. Their defense has to really lead the way. Let Pat Mahomes keep you in it, make the 3 throws like against Baltimore that just changed the game that were exceptional, and close the game out like a Michael Jordan would, but the defense is keeping them in the game.
Yeah, I on the Spags side of it, I mean, one of the great coordinators in this league, one of the great defensive minds in this league, but there's always been this adage that because they're so multiple, because they do so many different looks, because those defenses tend to grow as the year goes on. They learn into it. This year, because they had that nucleus, because they had those guys, the last 2 drafts, they've been sensational on the defensive side of the ball. Felt like they hit the ground from week 1. And I think for me, it's Steve Spagnuolo's masterpiece if they win the Super Bowl.
I mean, I would agree. It's been his best coaching job, and continuity plays so much into that. Him getting guys in multiple years in the system who can then relay that wisdom and knowledge to the younger guys in the system. They can self-correct quicker, on the sidelines from game to game, quarter to quarter. That stuff matters. I mean, no one gets it right out of the gate always, and so you've got to be able to, find opportunities quicker than the next guy and stay ahead of the curve. And ultimately, when you hold Lamar Jackson in the for most of the game to 3 points, that's not an accident. So they're doing something really well. His scheming has been incredible. They're very multiple, as you mentioned before, but they have guys who can operate in that system, be where they're supposed to be. And, the broader narrative this year in the NFL is that scoring is down. Scoring is down because more defenses have just decided, I would call it bend, don't break, but they have decided we are just not going to get beat in explosive one-off plays. We're going to make you beat us 10, 12, 15 play drives, make no mistakes, either kick a field goal, we'll get a turnover, or you're going to punt. And over the aggregate of a game and a season, we will come out on top in a defense led by Spags with continuity, with still a guy like Nick Bolton, who's a very good athletic linebacker with a D-line who can close games out, pass rushing, and with a DB group who work really well together. I think they've just maximized that stuff. And, it's weird to see Pat Mahomes only scoring 17 points, but it's like, look on the other side. They're in that position to come back and figure things out as the game goes on because the defense has just held other teams to low scoring.
You played in a few fun offenses in your time. I'm thinking Sean Payton's a guy who likes to get creative, but how much fun is it to see a guy like Trent Williams who, he is built like he's built like a cruise ship, but moves like a speedboat.
Sure.
It is astonishing the way that guy can get upfield, make the block at the second level, and it just feels like it's been this perfect fit since his move over.
He's just the rare. I think he's the best tackle in the league right now, but it's also rare that an offense has multiple schemes that are built around what he does specifically and what he excels at. And so they have kind of an outside zone scheme where they lead with either George Kittle or Kyle Juszczyk on his outside, and they have someone cleaning up on the inside, but it's literally a simple outside zone, but it allows him to, at his full acceleration and explosion level, zone block against a defensive end and not worry about an inside move or an outside move. He's protected on both sides, but you get the full breadth of his power on one guy. And so you think, oh, that's a lot to sacrifice for just one player on one scheme in one game. But it displaces the guy 10 yards, and then Christian McCaffrey is waving by as he runs through the hole. And so they specialize in stuff like that, but specifically because Trent Williams' skill set allows them to. Similarly on the pin and pulls. You get him on the edge, they have now changed the rules where DBs and smaller guys cannot cut offensive linemen when they're coming at him. That plays even more to his favor. So he's running, and now we've seen, I think, NFL films, or he mentioned it in an interview, DBs who are literally turning down the contact, the physicality, because Trent Williams is on the edge, pulling in space, and just running over guys. And again, Christian McCaffrey is benefiting because he's getting to say, bye, I've got 10 feet of space, here's another first down, here's an explosive play. And it seems like a lot to sacrifice, again, for just a lineman in one scheme, but their offense is built around stuff like that. And he just allows it because of what he does well. And it's just an incredible thing for Kyle Shanahan to have the stick-to-itiveness to even think of that, to then coach it, scheme it, and call it multiple times and rely on it. And so it's a unique thing, and I love it. It's incredible as a lineman.
To be fair, and I'm not this guy, but if I am a slender, rangy, 6'1", barely 210, soaking wet outside corner, I'm not going to want to invite contact if Trent Williams is running at me.
We call them business decisions, and those defensive backs are making real-time business decisions about what they're going to do when he's coming at you full speed.
A couple of storylines within the NFL this offseason that have some direct relationship to. Were you surprised to see Bill Belichick not catch on with a job?
Listen, I've kind of been walking the fence today because I am and then I'm not. I am in that, his reputation speaks for itself. His success speaks for itself. But I'm not because ultimately there's only 32 of these jobs. This cycle, there were only 7 or 8 openings. And so when we're talking about the structure in the NFL where owners are their own, no one tells owners what to do. They are the boss. They ultimately make the decision. So Bill's in the room with Arthur Blanks of the world. And if the fit's not there, it's just not there. So Bill might have a standard of how much control he wants over personnel and coaching and final roster decisions, and the owners might not feel comfortable about relinquishing that amount of control, even with Bill's success rate, because Bill's 72, I think. So a lot of things could play into that, and it just might not be a good fit, and there are only so many of these openings. So, yes, you believe that it happened just because of the scarcity of this opportunity, and then no, it's surprising because he's an all-time great. We think of him and call him the greatest coach of all time because he is, and so those things are in balance. I think it might be a good year for him to kind of sit back, retool how he does things. Maybe he changes his tune. Maybe he's got so much pushback on how much control he might want. Maybe he changes his tune. Maybe he decides this isn't for me. I still think he's got a lot of coaching in him. He's got a lot to give, and there will be, every year there's coaches that are fired. It's just that's the cycle of these things. So maybe we're talking about this next year a little differently, and it makes perfect sense. And there's so much we don't know about how those interviews go. But similarly with Vrabel, they're very specific and very demanding and very, they are themselves. And so if the fit's not there, regardless of how we see them as objectively good coaches, there's not another league they're going to go to and just let me coach in the USF. Like, it's just not going to happen. So
no, that's fair.
Maybe they just have to wait a beat.
Is there an element to it, do you think, at all of? I mean, Vrabel's more of maybe a player's coach. Like,
Sure.
the players love him. And we are moving into more and more of an era where you're seeing more Mike McDaniels and Sean McVays and guys who really connect with the players on a much more personal level, let them freelance a bit more, let them be a bit more themselves. I'm not saying Bill's not able to be that guy,
Sure.
but he's certainly got what from the outside looks like an old school mentality to him.
It's a different style, definitely, and I think I've heard this talked about a lot of, the current player, the average age, is young. I mean, as Bill's gotten older, the average age stays similarly the same, and so there could be a disconnect between his style that he's kind of married to and that he sees the most chance for success, and the style of the way the players want to be coached. And so there's maybe some people picking up on that, and the reason why so many McVay, Shanahan descendants are getting opportunities. There's definitely something to that, but I ultimately think in this industry that weighs winning so much as it should, it's got to be the right person, but I see someone sacrificing that, saying, I see the benefit of this outweighing the risk of some alienation or some perception that players might have of him, because he is about winning. He is as pure football as it gets. He is going to help you win in the margins. He's going to make your guys better as accountable teammates. They're going to be smarter football players, because the thing that Bill Belichick teams always had was a knowledge of situational awareness. And that so many times has cost teams wins. And you talk about their 6 championships between him and Tom Brady together in 20 years. So many of those came down to, we just didn't make the mistake, or we took advantage of a little moment of arbitrage, a little edge that you prepare for. It didn't happen by accident. We took advantage where other people don't see the opportunity there. And so there's something to be said for that, and not everyone is on board with that.
I can sit here and talk about the end of Super Bowl 49 till the cows come home, the decision not to take the timeout, the knowledge that they throw on second down from second and goal, the fact that they'd on the scout team ran that exact play and Malcolm Butler hadn't picked Jimmy Garoppolo off once, and yet in the big moment, all of those little bits of it's astonishing. Honestly, I could nerd out about it for hours. You spent the first 4 years of your career in Green Bay. Is Aaron Rodgers going to be a success in New York next year?
If he stays healthy, there'll be a success, especially if you juxtapose that with the standard that they've had for so long. So, but does that mean playoff run, Super Bowl? If we're talking just better than the Jets have been, competitive in their division and competitive in the AFC, yes, if he's healthy. If we're talking, guaranteed playoff run, Super Bowl run, not necessarily. We love, and as we rightfully should, talk about the quarterbacks, because they make this game go. They make everyone, the best ones, elevate everyone else around them. But it's still a team game. It is the ultimate team game. And as good as their roster was last year, it's hard to duplicate that from year to year. So, literally, they were primed with the defense they had, the playmaker, with a guy like Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, a healthy Breece Hall, they were primed. No one is the same from year to year. No group, no unit, no team is the same from year to year. And so you hope that if they're at their best and Aaron Rodgers is healthy, they are going to be competitive, absolutely. But you're also talking about the AFC with Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Tua Tagovailoa, Joe Burrow's coming back off injury, Justin Herbert with Jim Hart. It's stacked.
Wild.
And so if we're just talking about odds.
It's a good time to be in the NFC, baby.
Yeah, if we're talking, right. He should have, if we're being real about it, if you saw the tea leaves. So all that combined, nothing, it's all very complicated. It all has to play into factor. They'll be successful. They'll be better than they were. But against the elites, it remains to be seen. And so you're talking about a guy who's 40, going to be 41. We've already seen Tom Brady defy the odds, but he is the outlier. There's just been no one else like that. And so as a football fan and a former teammate of Aaron Rodgers, I hope he comes back and lights the league on fire. But
it'll be fun.
It is the biggest if in the NFL. So we'll see.
Very finally, it's everyone's favorite question on Radio Row. What's your pick for the weekend?
Ooh, yeah, the pick. Listen, I haven't done it much, and I'm not the guy who did, but I think generally people are done betting against Patrick Mahomes. I think the spread is what it is. I think that the 49ers, as I mentioned, are a more complete team. But Patrick Mahomes has this singular focus about his legacy right now that just feels kind of inevitable. And I think with the defense that he has now learned to lean on, he is checking the ball down more. He is picking and choosing where he relies on guys who have been a little shaky, and he's making the play where it used to be 10 to 15 times a game. He's making it 5 to 7 times a game. That keeps the chains moving, makes the touchdown, puts them in field goal range. If the game is close, late in the fourth quarter, I'm betting on Patrick Mahomes to elevate and rise above the game, and that is the calculus that I'm making, even though on paper they're not as complete of a team. Brock Purdy, we've had all the discourse about him, and I still think he's a really good quarterback, but they've got a ton of talent. But Pat Mahomes, if there's one score, if a one-score game, I'm not betting against him. I cannot at this point.
Marshall, absolute pleasure as always. Thank you so much, sir.
Appreciate it, guys.